World of Goo 2 is right around the corner. If you've seen the countdown for its release date that I've been posting on my post tab, you already know how excited I am to finally get to play it. Now's the perfect time to replay the original, which I already did a gaming series on years ago. Recently, I played through the whole game in just 3 hours, and I realized that most of the levels actually vary widely in difficulty regardless of what chapter you're playing. So I decided, hey, why not try to rank all 47 levels in this game from easiest to hardest? I'm not going to consider OCDs, because if I did I would really have OCD. At least not conventionally. There are some that I like to casually achieve as they don't make the level itself any harder, but there are others that I just find straight up impossible. Thus, this ranking is going to be based on my personal experiences, adjusted to preference on whether I go for the OCD or not. I did end up getting most of the OCDs while writing the script, but yeah, I never truly cared about 100% in this game. So if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and without further ado, let's get to the list. 47. Observatory Observation Station. Ironically, the final level in the game also happens to be the easiest, and it's the only one without an OCD. You're given 12 fish to play with against the sign painter's wishes, and all you have to do is attach them to the island to uproot it into space. Take it away. 46. Beauty School. Basically, you have to get this big lady down to the bottom of the level. All it takes is a couple balloons to get this structure out of the way. When she touches the grinders, she will burst into 18 pieces of beauty product, which are the only ones that can go into the red pipe. Then, you can use one of the IV goo balls you just detached to reach the pipe. Pretty straightforward, it's impossible to even fail as far as I'm aware. 45. Going Up. The first level in the game. Self-explanatory, just build a little tower upwards to reach the pipe. Works well as a tutorial. 44. Flying Machine. Use the balloons to open the gates, and then use a few more to give these fellas a lift. The pipe is really high up, so if you want the OCD, you could try attaching more balloons to the structure to make it fly faster, and then try clicking the continue button as fast as you can. Personally, I don't remember succeeding at this. 43. Small Divide. This level will look a little intimidating at first to the average Joe, but the gap you have to build across is realistically tiny. If you know what you're doing, you could easily collect 16 goo balls for the OCD. 42. Hello World. The first level of chapter 4. All you have to do here is shoot the bits to the other side and use the pixels to build to the pipe once they wake up. You're unlikely to let anything fall off the screen. Finishing in under 9 seconds though was quite a doozy. 41. Leap Hole. This is one of several levels in this game where you can utilize a technique called pipe hanging, but it's the only level where this is required. The terrain and layout are similar to Going Up, but this time you have a limited number of IV goo balls to work with. Thankfully they are detachable, so once you build to the pipe, you can start reducing the structure strategically to leave 2 nodes and a leg dangling by the pipe and recycle all the balls that remain. Then you can detach the ball that's hanging to collect the one closer to the pipe. I use this strategy whenever I have detachable goo balls to work with, and it's mandatory for OCD requirements in other levels. This level on the other hand requires you to do it fast. 40. Ivy Towers. Speaking of levels with pipe hanging, the previous chapter actually has a few levels where you could execute it when you probably didn't know the first time. This is one of them. The pipe is really high up, but you can detach the IV goo balls and recycle them to reach it while clinging onto the walls. With the pipe hanging technique, you can collect up to 16. 39. Whistler. This is the first level where you use one of the most important features in the game, the whistle. First, you have to guide the product goo over to the left, get the water goo to wake up, and attach those to the other side. The entire structure is hanging by a thread, which means the little weight that the goo balls have is enough to bounce it around. 38. Hang Low. The intended method to complete this level is to first build downwards to wake up the albino goo balls resting at the bottom, and then build up to the pipe now that you have enough to work with. But what I like to do is throw balls to nudge the sleepyheads so they bounce out of their position, and hope that they get close enough to the structure so they wake up. This makes the OCD much easier to achieve. In fact, I would say it's mandatory. 37. Drool. The introduction of water goos. They only have one leg, making them useful for building single strands downwards. The pipe is located on the left side past walls of spikes, which water goos can't reach. You need to wake up the IV goos sleeping below the cliff and get to the pipe with them. Nudging these towards the structure is kinda scary since you don't want to lose any of them to the spikes, but luckily you don't have to do this with all of them if you want to collect as many as possible. 36. Chain. The IV goo balls carry this level hard. As long as you never use the common ones to build, you have all the room in the world to make mistakes and still get the OCD. After you use the IV goos to wake up the common ones, building up to the pipe is the main challenge of this level, but even that is not difficult, it just requires a little patience. It's very satisfying once you're settled to do the pipe hanging technique. 35. Waterlock. The first Chapter 3 level in this list. The layout of this level might seem confusing at first, but the way to complete it is rather simple. First, you have to wait until the structure gets close to the ball of this wishbone looking thingy and latch the Goo into it. If you detach the Pokey at the right moment when the structure is deepest into the water, it will fly up, approach the pipe above, and a ton of product goos will go into it. Because of the increased momentum, you might have to repeat all of this until you collect the required 36 and eventually the 44 for OCD. Yeah, quite frankly, the OCD adds nothing to the level, so I pretty much go for it entirely by default. 34. Mom's Computer. Right off the bat, ignore this tiny green structure inside the window, as it's irrelevant to complete this chapter 4 set piece. What you need to do is grab blocks from either the applications or games icons, build beyond the top of the desktop, and eventually you'll reach the icon of MOM. You can do this with a single stack of applications if you're going for OCD, but you can use 2 or even 3 if you're not confident with your stability. Once you reach the icon, you click on it, and now you're able to have a conversation with her about spam. We're not here to go into full detail about this gimmick, but basically, in order to beat this level, you just have to always pick the last option. Eventually, you'll get mail. 33. Tumblr. This entire level constantly rotates. It might be discouraging at first, especially with the music, but just keep building until you collect all the balls. Despite the placing on the list, it's impossible to completely fail, and you can finish it off with the pipe hanging technique. 32. Roadblocks. Conceptually, this is pretty simple. You have to build a bridge across a very large gap, and you're given blocks to make a supporting pillar for it. Placing rectangular blocks vertically is efficient in getting the job done in fewer moves. 31. Product Launcher. First, you're presented with 3 giant Z-Bomb Goo, which you have to grind by detaching the IV structures. The Goo Balls released will eventually wake up a whole fuse structure, which you must burn and explode by building it to the flame above. You might need to use the balloons to help with stability, but it's painless. 30. Fisty's Bog. One of the realistically easiest levels in the game that I actually remember skipping when I played it as a kid. The goal of this level is to find a balance between gravity and buoyancy. You need to use the balloons to prevent the structure from falling into the spikes below, but you also have to be careful not to let the spikes above pop the balloons. When I was younger, I would always put balloons at the end, which isn't a great strategy as it usually results in the balloons popping. Attaching them to the left of the end reduces mobility, which makes it easier to get across. Not too hard, it just requires a bit of critical thinking. 29. Genetic Sorting Machine. Basically, you have to sort 4 ladies by genetics by carrying them to their respective machines. 3 uglies on the left that land into a spike pit their products are immune to, and once the pit is filled, the beauty going on the right will be able to go across. Then, the beauty products will reach the summit and into a small structure that needs balloons to lift. It's possible to get to this point without making any moves, by the way. 28. Fly away, little ones. Here, you need to move this wheel-shaped goo structure to the other side, reach the sleeping goo, and then aim for the pipe located beneath a pit of spikes by using the balloons to make the structure float. You can also move the thing by throwing goo at it. It gets scary when you approach the pipe, but you only need to collect 4, and the OCD requires you to sacrifice some of the structure first. 27. Deliverance. The goal is to get the unbelieved pill to the furthest depths of the recycle bin. The bits are actually flammable and explode when set on fire, so you need to use them to break the blocks that stand in the way. This can be a little finicky because sometimes the blocks will block your aim, but not much strategy is involved. Eventually you'll reach a line structure that you need to launch bits into so it swings towards the fire. On the pop-up, you'll be asked if you want to continue to undelete, and the only options you're given are OK or yes. There's no difference between the two at all. 26. Impale Sticky. To reach the pipe, you need to build around the ledge where there's a couple blades you need to avoid touching. If you make it to the higher ground above the blades, your structure will stick and you'll be able to finish. This is one of the earliest tricky levels in the game that will surely be a doozy to new players. The point of this level is to introduce the time bugs, which allow you to undo your last move if you make a mistake. Add on the strong airflow that pushes objects to the right side of the screen, and you got yourself a realistically easy level that doesn't take much to master. 25. Graceful Failure. Short and sweet. Quickly remove the blocks in a fashion where the structure can slide down the blades and the surviving glue balls are light into the pipe. You can lean the blocks whenever you need to. 24. Welcoming Unit. Basically, you need to carry a ton of product goo balls up a gear and through a gate to the exit pipe using IV goo balls and balloons respectively. This can turn into one of the most time-consuming levels in the game if you want to collect every single goo ball in the level, which, yes, is possible. Simply put, you do have to snap the fragile worker cable against the Signpainter's wishes. 23. Burning Man. There is a giant super meat boy looking blockhead who is in the way of the pipe. You need to move him away by burning down the fuse structure, and then you can get the smaller structure above him to approach the pipe. You can build towards the fire at the bottom or do goo throwing to burn the whole thing without even using any moves. Either way, don't forget to squeeze every spare goo ball between the man and the wall. 22. The third wheel. The only other level that has the pokey. You need to use it to lift the goo structure around the rotating wheels, with the eponymous third wheel mostly covered in spikes. Luckily it has knobs to attach safely into, and you can also use the bone goos to prevent the structure from doing anything funny. It's a little awkward at first. 21. Volcanic Percolator Day Spa. Get the ugly goo up there so the gears grind her, and then fit her products through the narrow hole to get to the red pipe. The strategy here is to give her a boost in the air by attaching below her upper half, but she can fall off the screen very easily, so you might have to build walls around. Sometimes it also feels like she's already high enough to reach the opposite airflow, but then she comes back down. This is also the only pre-chapter 3 level with fire in the form of a poison flower that can destroy the entire ivy structure in one fell swoop. Only use it when you already have the ugliest products. 20. Regurgitation Pumping Station. You start at the bottom of something or someone's stomach, and you must find a way to unswallow the structure and reach the throat. There are many ivy goo balls to work with, and since they're on water, it's incredibly unstable. You can use a similar strategy to the tumbler level, and once you reach past a few of the rotating devices, the structure will finally shift upwards. Eventually you'll come across these eyes, which are a variation of balloons. The goal of this level is to attach those eyes to the structure and lift it into space. Alternatively, you can attach an eye and single out the goo ball that has the eye attached. Not only is it a funny sight, but it also saves on moves. 19. Graphic Processing Unit. First, you need to launch a bit goo downwards in either direction and hope it wipes up the pilots on top. The odds that it'll land on a blade are surprisingly low, albeit still scary, and you'll never touch the deadly unit in the center unless you really do it on purpose. Anyway, you then need to launch pilot goos to add strands to the inverse hanging line, and you'll approach the pipe after 4 extensions. Most of the difficulty with this level comes down to getting lucky with your timing. You can't get the pilot goos in the pipe since they'll just keep adding more strands, so you only need to worry about the bits to complete the level and even get the OCD. Actually, there was a pilot that somehow never got attached. Can the pipe suck it? Wow, oh my god. 13 balls, that is one past OCD. 18. Secondhand smoke. There is a flame immediately in the way of the pipe. The albino structure above is not flammable, so you'll have to burn away at the fuse strands around it. You need to make sure you're connecting both sides to the center and build downwards, because if you start burning without having done that, the hand won't catch the albino structure and will fall to its death. Any loose fuse goo can still go in the pipe even while burning, which is required to achieve the OCD, but even when you do, the level often leaves you feeling like you could have done even better. That might just be a me issue, to be honest. 17. The red carpet. You need to build an ivy structure covering a large gap, and also build an albino structure that weights down and extends the red carpet-o-matic, which releases a beauty goo into the tunnel on the right side. The gears do their thing, and now you just need to build to the red pipe, which could be rather challenging. 16. Grapevine Virus. You need to infect some bits to turn them into pilots, and then launch the pilots higher between structures until you reach the hanging line on top of the level, which you need to extend to reach the pipe. While doing this, you'll want to make sure the line dangles as little as possible, and you must never get 2 pilots attached to the same node if you're going for the OCD. 15. Incineration Destination. Not only do you have to build a fuse structure to the other side and wake up all who's there, but you also need to build a non-flammable albino structure on top of it. You can't let the structure touch the fire and burn it until you're able to connect both sides. The walls are sticky to make this job a little easier. From this point on, the hardest part is over. You'll then need to burn the fuses along with a couple sticky bombs, which are used to blow up walls. One of them will release a bunch of Sleeping Beauty products, Sleeping Beauty, and the other will unlock the right pipe. The aforementioned albino structure allows the beauty products to cross the pit after the fuses have been burnt. 14. Misty's Long Bony Road. The counterpart of Fisty's level is way trickier, at least if you were to ask my younger self who skipped this level like an idiot. This level introduces bone goo, which are immune to spikes. You need to use them to get across. There are only 4 of these guys to work with, and they run out before you reach the downward slope of the floor. Thankfully they are detachable, so you can reuse them, and in fact you might need to do so a lot. Since they are squares, the way they roll backwards can affect the positioning of the structure, and you'll have to pop time bugs if you find yourself losing the structure to the spikes. But once you master this, even the OCD is relatively easy. 13. Alice and Bob and the third party. You use the blocks to catch the hex goo balls that cycle between Alice's mouth and Bob's ear. Make sure you have covered the pits of blades with the skinny blocks, and that the edge towers have the right number of blocks to deflect the hex goo coming down and into the structure made up of pilots. Then you can extend the structure into the pipe and hope that you saved all 43 hexes. It's super satisfying when you do, despite how the OCD gives you room to lose one of them. 12. Bulletin board system. This level is like Hello World, but it built upon the concept to make something much harder. You need to shoot bit goos through 4 different structures while working with leftward gravity and avoiding blades along the way. You have to be very precise going from the second to the third, which almost requires you to get lucky because this actually shows how inconsistent flinging bits can be. The OCD allows you to lose 1 ball, assuming you're not going to use the pixel on the second structure to make easier shots. I don't like doing that, so I have to deal with bank flinging physics. This level is annoying, but you only need to collect 4 goo balls at minimum to beat this level anyway, so I think placing it here on the list makes sense. 11. Ode to the Bridge Builder. This is very similar to Small Divide, but you need to build across a much larger gap. You're gonna have to build plenty of support to make it to the other side, but that also leaves you short of achieving the unforgiving OCD. You could try building upwards, topple the tower and hope it reaches, but that's also not the easiest thing ever. 10. Upper Shaft. Here you need to lower this big bomb to where the breakable walls are by assembling the line of Ivy goo balls like so. Then, rather than extending the fuse below the bomb, get the fuse goo balls above and use 1 or 2 to continue lengthening the line. Once the walls have been blown up, you'll now have to build across the gap, and this is where you may find yourself spending a lot of time finding an optimal strategy to collect as many as possible. It turns out, this little anchor can stick to a wall if you make the line swing, and that can be used to your advantage. Generally, you'll want to only use Ivy goo balls to build whenever possible, so you can recycle not only those, but also any others that go loose from detaching, plus making sure you have a good setup for the same techniques from Hang Low and other levels mentioned earlier. There's a lot going on here, but after I managed to collect a total of 51, I can say it definitely pays off. 9. Tower of Goo. One of the most notorious levels in the entire game and quite possibly the hardest level in chapter 1. It's going up on steroids. Basically you just have to build a 14-meter tall structure of goo, which as you may have guessed will require tons of support. But it's the same case as Ode to the Bridge Builder where the OCD is very unforgiving. You'll just have to try building fast, straight up, and hope you reach the pipe before your tower inevitably buckles. I did get pretty close to the OCD, but I don't feel like stressing myself enough to achieve it. 8. Beauty and the Electric Tentacle. Guide the Beauty to the underground pipe on the bottom right. As you can imagine, she is pretty heavy. You'll need to use basically all the balloons as you try extending the line. But to get the OCD, you can't extend it too much. Instead, you could try attaching a couple balloons to the tip and have the Beauty roll over them. This is tricky to do, but if you manage to pull it off, it's all smooth sailing from here. This level also has an Easter egg you can find by taking the Beauty to the left side of the line, but this will render the level impossible to complete and you'll have to restart. 7. Blustery Day. The wind is blowing to the right. You need to build a line of water goo lifted by balloons to go around a deadly windmill. The windmill here is one heck of a hazard. It will easily screw you over if you're not paying attention to what's going on. The danger continues when you get close to the pipe, as either the wind might carry it too far beyond the pipe, or weighing down on it will cause the windmill to snap the line in half. Alternatively, you could start by not using any balloons at all and build straight through the base of the windmill, but reaching the pipe with this method also has its quirks. Nevertheless, I've been able to manage 21 balls at most. 6. Super Fuse Challenge Time. Way down at the very bottom of the level is a patch of grass that somehow ignites a long fuse, essentially making this level a race against time to build to the red pipe while gathering beauty products sleeping on clouds. You only need to approach 3 clouds for the minimum requirement, but you won't be able to help but keep going up trying to get more. This is incredibly stressful. If you want the OCD, you absolutely need to build fast while also trying to keep your whole structure stable, all before the burning fuse catches up. To make matters worse, whenever a fuse node explodes, it causes the surrounding structure to flinch, which not only indicates you're running out of time, but also messes with stability. This might be the level that feels the least good to play. 5. The server farm. There's a pipe on the upper right that you have to reach. It looks easy, but the platform you're sitting on is completely rotational. If you start going even slightly out of balance, you will lose your whole tower and have to restart. Oddly enough, I found that it works best if you first nudge the structure a little to the right before you unleash your speed and finesse to finish the level. Anyone who encounters this level for the first time will definitely be stumped, considering the sign painter doesn't have anything useful to say. 4. Infested the Worm. This is the first of the final 3 challenges of the game. Basically, you must lift the left side of the structure with balloons and raise it over to reach the next platform, and continue doing so while extending the structure when necessary, until you eventually get to the pipe. The last thing you want to do in this level is rush it. It requires patience and balancing, most notably when you're at higher altitudes where the wind is stronger. The OCD only allows you to attach 2 goo balls throughout the entire thing, and that will eventually have you throw goo at the structure while making it float with balloons. The other strategy is to start the level by sacrificing more than half of the structure into the void so it's easier to lift. Make sure to whistle as the structure approaches the dead zone, and watch out for any goo balls that wake up and just fall off the edge. 3. You have to explode the head. Right to the point. You're supposed to wake up the sticky bomb located way above, set it on fire and blow up the robot's head with it, but there is no available room for building support whatsoever. You don't want to have your tower go too far to either side because it will burn too early, and also not too close to the center to avoid touching the robot's head since it's covered in spikes. There are several methods to get all the way up there, but the easiest method for me happens to involve rebounding. When the ground is cleaned out, throw a fuse goo at the ground at a very specific angle and speed. It needs to rebound off the ground, rebound again off the wall, pass through the fire, and hope it reaches the sticky bomb. If you manage to pull this off on the first try, which, not to brag, I did, you can collect up to 87 balls. That's nearly double the OCD requirement. For the record, I didn't have to skip any of the 47 levels in the entire game back when I did the gaming series, but that still doesn't take away the fact that the intended way to do this level is just really annoying. 2. Weather Vane. Similar to Blustery Day, there is a giant blade in the middle you have to build around, with the pipe to the right leading to a bottomless pit. Along the way, you'll have 6 balloons to work with, and you'll also build through clouds that will make your structure slightly more floaty. It's really hard to even get to the balloons in the first place though, at least in my opinion. Once you do get to use them, make sure you have all 6 of them attached to your structure on your way down, and you should be fine. But watch out for how the sleepyheads wake up and instantly jump to their doom. I've been able to finish this level with over 30 balls beyond the OCD, mainly due to not wanting to add support at the beginning to reach the balloons. Wanna try that? Get ready to re-attempt a lot. 1. Horizontal Transportation Innovation Committee. In terms of difficult World of Goo levels, I'd say this one takes the cake. It's another bridge building level, but this time you're unable to make any base footholds of any kind since the platforms are covered in spikes. To make matters worse, the node at the bottom right of the starting structure is replaced by an anchor, so don't even think about attempting to build a bridge like you normally have been. The only balloon you're given to work with won't be enough to sustain it. This leaves us with only one option, to build upwards. There is a sign on a cloud that you need to reach and then a bit higher for good measure. When you think you're ready, topple the tower to the right and hope that it touches the platform on the other side. Many times I had to fall just short of it and it's really frustrating. There is an easier method that involves starting with a specifically crooked base like this, which also allows you to achieve OCD, but you'll never figure this out unless you actually look up walkthroughs. For being the most punishing level with the trial and error you have to go through, I think this is the hardest level in World of Goo. And that's it for this video. Are you excited for World of Goo 2? Which levels do you have the biggest skill issues with? Let me know in the comments. I wanted to make a different kind of ranking video to anticipate the sequel to this game after the other 3 rankings I made which were movie related. I will see you guys later for a gaming series on World of Goo 2 utilizing my classic text commentary format. Peace.